In this video, we're going to talk about the variable scoping in the C programming language. So in the C programming language, we have two major types of variables. We have the local variables and the global variables. So the majority of variables that you use are mostly local variables. Now, local variables are those variables that are created within a function or within a block of code. So let's look at our code over here. So inside a main function, I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it number and I'm going to give it some value like 37. Now this variable number is the local variable of the function integer main. This means that this variable can only be accessed within this function. So if I use a printf function and try to print out this variable, I should have no problem. Just like that, I am able to print out this number. But if I create another function, and even if I call this function from the main function, I am going to be met with an error. So if I run this code, I get this error that the variable number is undeclared. Now, this is happening because this function print number does not have access to the local variables of the function main. So in this particular scenario, what we need to do is that we need to create global variables. Now the way to create global variables is that we need to create it out of all functions. So if I go right under my include statement and create the number over here, this time around I am going to be able to print out the number twice. Once from inside the main function and once from inside this function that we created, which is the print number. There you go. We were able to print this number twice. Now if we look at the local variables once more, there is something called a block variable. Well, it is actually a type of local variable. Well, all the variables that are enclosed within the left and the right curly braces are known as the block variables. Now, block variables can only be accessed within that particular block. What I mean is that if I use a for statement and if I create integer I to start out this for loop and then print out the value of this variable I would have no problem. I'm getting all the values of the variable I. But if I try accessing this integer I outside of this particular block of code or outside these curly braces, like if I try to print out the value of I over here, I wouldn't be allowed to do so because the scope of the variable I is enclosed within these curly braces. So if I run this code, I'll be met with an error. So another example of this block variable would be if I simply create two curly braces and then create a variable inside it, not inside a for loop, just plain blank curly braces. And if I try printing out the value from within the curly braces, I would have no errors. I would be able to execute my code properly. But if I try running the same printf statement outside of this curly braces, I would not be able to compile this program because I would be met by an error. Just like that. If we have nested blocks, which means that if we have another curly braces within these curly braces, we can say that the outer block is the parent of the inner block. So the children block are able to access the variables of the parent block. If I clear out my terminal and rerun the code, you can see that I'm able to print out this value. But if the variable is declared within the child block and you try to access it from the parent block, you are again going to be met with an error. So that was all for variable scoping and all types of different local scoping within the C programming language.